Jake Morris felt the transport shudder violently around him. Metal groaned as another blast struck their vessel. Through the small porthole he saw enemy ships closing in swiftly, their black hulls gleaming in the starlight like ravenous predators. "We're going down," the pilot yelled over the din. "Everyone to the escape pods." Jake grabbed his rifle and raced toward the rear. Behind him, comrades followed suit. The Vex Empire had found them again. These cybernetic monsters relentlessly hunted, seeking to obliterate all life in the galaxy. The escape pod bay was pandemonium. Soldiers pushed past each other, scrambling for safety. Jake aided in loading wounded comrades into pods before taking one himself. As his escape pod tore away from the burning transport, he watched the ship explode in a fiery maelstrom. His pod spun wildly as it plummeted toward the brown, rocky surface of Zerion 7. He'd heard of this desolate world, said to harbor only ancient ruins. But as his pod landed with a jarring thud, he saw movement on the surface. Large shapes shifted among the rocks and caves. Jake's head banged against the pod's wall, plunging him into darkness. When he regained consciousness, smoke filled the cramped space. He kicked open the door, coughing and gasping for air. A nightmarish landscape unfolded before him. Red rocks like broken teeth jutted from the ground, and a sickly yellow sky held two suns. In the distance, plumes of smoke marked other crashed pods. Jake checked his rifle and headed toward the nearest crash site. Hoping to find survivors, he climbed over a rubble heap, his heart seizing at the sound that froze his blood. A clicking, communal noise, like colossal insects conversing. He crept closer, peering over a boulder. Below, 3 creatures surrounded a damaged escape pod. His stomach clenched as he recognized them. Krulon warriors. The monsters his people had battled for 3 years. The Krulon were colossal, nearly 8 feet tall, their bodies a grotesque blend of insect and lizard. Hard black shells covered their backs and limbs. 4 glowing red eyes pierced their faces, and long razor-sharp claws protruded from each hand. Rows of needle-sharp teeth lined their mouths. One of the Krulon was dragging something from the wreckage. With horror, Jake saw Lieutenant Adams, the young soldier he'd sat beside on the transport, his lifeless body. The Krulon raised the corpse, communicating with clicking sounds to their companions. Jake raised his rifle. He could potentially subdue one before the others reacted. But then what? More Krulon were likely nearby. Alone on an alien world, his ammunition was limited. Just as he was about to decide, a deep humming filled the air, growing louder with each passing second. Jake looked up and saw 3 black Vex fighters hurtling towards them. Their sleek hulls reflected the sun, an ominous presence. The crew, seeing the Vex, dispersed for cover, but too late. The Vex ships unleashed bright blue energy beams. The ground where the Krulon stood erupted in a shower of rock and dust. 2 fell instantly. The third, largest creature, dove behind a boulder at the same moment that Jake had. The Vex fighters circled ominously, their weapons recharging with a high-pitched whine. Jake knew they would finish off the wounded Krulon, and then come for him. Without thinking, Jake stood and fired at the lead Vex ship. Red bolts of energy streaked across the sky, some finding their mark, causing sparks to fly. The Vex fighters instantly changed course, pursuing Jake. He kept shooting, finding cover as he ran. The wounded Krulon, witnessing the confrontation, stared at Jake with its 4 red eyes. Then, surprisingly, began firing. The Krulon's weapons fired green bolts that seemed capable of disintegrating material. A bolt struck a Vex ship's wing, causing it to spin wildly and crash. Together, Jake and the surviving Krulon drove off the other 2 Vex ships. They flew away, likely seeking reinforcements, but the immediate danger subsided. Jake approached the wounded Krulon cautiously, his finger hovering on the trigger. 3 years of war had conditioned him to view these creatures as enemies, creatures that had slain thousands of human soldiers and civilians, mindless monsters who only understood violence. But this Krulon had just helped him fend off the Vex. It had saved his life. The creature was leaning against a rock, green blood dripping from its wounds. It watched Jake approach without raising its weapon. Then, to Jake's astonishment, the creature spoke, in perfect English. "Human soldier," it said, its voice a deep, metallic groan. "You helped Thea fight metal demons." Jake stopped. He'd never heard a Krulon speak his language. Military briefings had declared them too primitive for such communication. But this one not only spoke English, it had a name. Thexka. "The Vex are everyone's enemy," Jake replied. "They want to kill us, both humans and Krulon." Thexka's response sounded like laughter. "Truth words," it said. "Metal demons destroy Thexka's kin, kill many warrior kin. Now metal demons come for all life in the void." Jake saw Thexka's injuries were severe. Without medical attention, it would likely perish soon. He stepped forward. "You're hurt," he said. "I have medical supplies." Thexka's 4 eyes studied him for a long moment. "Human helps enemy kind. Maybe we don't have to be enemies anymore," Jake countered. "Not when we've got bigger problems to deal with." The Krulon nodded slowly, the dawn of an unexpected alliance. Jake spent the next hour attending to Thexka's wounds. The alien blood was strange, yet humanity's biology wasn't that dissimilar. When Jake finished, Thexka could walk without much pain. "Human has healing knowledge," Thexka said, flexing its wounded arm. "Good skill for wartime." "My name is Jake," he said, "not just human." "Jake human," Thexka repeated. They searched for more survivors, both human and Krulon, finding 2 more. Zixna, a scarred female Krulon warrior, and Keth Rowe, a young Krulon male. For days, Jake learned Krulon combat, a style fundamentally different from human tactics. They were powerful and swift, but not without vulnerabilities. Their simple minds focused on brute force. The Krulon group that Jake met explained their struggle, explaining that the Vex were destroying their homeworld, reducing their numbers to a few thousand in the galaxy. The enemy, they said, came without negotiation, seeking only destruction. Over the next couple of days, Jake learned to fight alongside the Krulon. Their combat was direct, based on using their innate armor and claws. But their minds operated in stark simplicity. They favored direct assaults on their foes, eschewing clever tricks and traps. When Jake proposed more inventive strategies, the Krulon initially found his suggestions perplexing. "Why not attack head-on?" Keith queried, as Jake proposed a plan to circumvent a Vex patrol. "Strength lies in open combat," he reasoned, though there were 20 of them compared to their 4. "Sometimes smarts are better than brawn," Jake explained. Their first joint challenge arose when they spotted a Vex supply convoy snaking through a valley below. Jake counted 12 enemy soldiers and 3 transport vehicles. The team urged an immediate downhill assault. "We'll be wiped out," Jake countered firmly. "But if we collaborate, we can prevail." He outlined an ambuscade. Zixna and Kethro would conceal themselves on one flank, while Jake and Thax positioned themselves on the opposite side. When the convoy reached the valley's center, Jake would deploy grenades to disrupt the enemy. The crew would then attack simultaneously, taking advantage of the resultant chaos. "A complex plan," Thexer admitted, "but Jake, the human, has a clever mind. Let's try the human way." The ambush proved flawless. Jake's grenades destroyed one transport and scattered the enemy soldiers. The Krulon, leveraging their speed and clawed strength, decimated the disoriented Vex. Within minutes, the entire convoy was annihilated. The wisdom of human combat is potent, Zixna conceded. Though still distrustful of Jake, she acknowledged his tactical ability. 3 weeks passed. Their small force conducted further raids against Vex positions, consistently integrating Jake's strategic insights with the Krulon's combat prowess. They destroyed supply depots, communication arrays, and scout patrols. Each victory strengthened their alliance. Through their shared struggles, Jake began to discern that the Krulon were not the mindless monsters he'd been told about. They displayed complex emotions, valuing honor and family. Their mourning of fallen comrades and exultation in victories resonated with human experience. Indeed, in many aspects, they were more human than some humans Jake knew. One morning, as they prepared another raid, they heard the drone of engines overhead. These were unusual. Familiar with Vex ships, Jake identified them as human. A battered military shuttle, riddled with bullet holes and losing engine power, descended. Jake fired a bright red flare. The shuttle altered course, flying toward them, pursued by Vex fighters raining fire. "We must aid them," Jake declared. The 4 warriors raced to the shuttle's landing site, where it plummeted to the ground with catastrophic landing gear failure. Jake observed human soldiers escaping the wreckage. A woman, donned in captain's bars, stepped out of the wreckage. "Thank God," she stated. "I'm Captain Lisa Hayes. We've been fleeing the Vex for days." Yet, recognizing the Krulon warriors, her expression changed into horror. "Get away from those creatures," she shouted, pointing a weapon at Theexa. "They are the enemy." "No," Jake quickly interposed. "They're with me. We're battling the Vex together." Lisa stared, aghast. "Together? Those are Krulon. They've taken many lives of ours, and we've similarly taken many of theirs," Jake countered. "But the Vex seek to annihilate all of us. We need each other to survive." Behind Captain Hayes, other human soldiers also pointed their weapons at the Krulon. These survivors, 8 in number from various units, were tired and fearful, yet ready to confront the enemy. Thex spoke in a deep voice, resonating across the scarred terrain. "Human warriors fear Krulon warriors." Understanding is slow, but Jake the human speaks the truth. Metal demons are death for all life forms. "They can talk," a soldier whispered in awe. "They all can talk," Jake affirmed. "And they think, plan, feel, much like us. I fought alongside them for 3 weeks. They saved my life." Lisa slowly lowered her weapon. Recognizing the immediate threat posed by the Vex, the inherent aid the Krulon had provided, and Jake's earnest plea, she acknowledged the urgent necessity for cooperation. "This is unbelievable," she conceded. "But we're stuck here with a lack of supplies and no escape." "If you trust them, I do," Jake reaffirmed. Lisa nodded. "Then we're allies." She turned towards the Krulon. "Can you understand me?" Thex answered. The Krulon leader responded. "We fight with Lisa, the human, against metal demons." The union of humans and Krulon marked a novel alliance in their shared history. Yet Jake sensed a further trial lay ahead. 2 weeks into their unified operations, the Vex main fleet materialized. Jake was on watch duty when he detected the first ships emerging from hyperspace. They filled the sky, a menacing swarm of metallic insects obscuring the yellow suns. "Everyone up," Jake radioed. "The Vex have arrived in force." Their camp prepared for movement, a testament to their practiced, cohesive approach. The combined force, 8 people from the human contingent and their 3 crew allies, functioned with remarkable efficiency. Jake, however, recognized the impossibility of confronting a full-scale Vex invasion in open combat. Captain Lisa Hayes assessed the enemy through binoculars. At least 50 vessels, she mused darkly. Transport ships, fighters, heavy cruisers. This isn't a patrol, it's an invasion. Thex communicated in Krulon to his comrades, then addressed the humans. Krulon know of ancient, hidden caves in the Xerion's 7 mountains, safe havens for countless nest builders. How far? Lisa inquired. A 2-day trek through a rocky maze. Zixna supplied the translation. Vex machines can't navigate such constricted spaces. They commenced their journey immediately. The terrain provided partial cover. However, their progress was impeded by Vex reconnaissance scouts. 2 times were they forced to seek concealment in rock crevices as enemy ships circled overhead. On the 2nd day's journey, their group encountered more survivors. 6 human Marines concealed in a wrecked supply ship. Among them was Sergeant Mike Torres, a hardened veteran with cold, distrustful eyes. He had been fighting Krulon for 2 years before the Vex invasion. Torres was disgusted by the unexpected juxtaposition of humans and Krulon. "This is appalling," he sputtered to Lisa. "We're soldiers, not alien collaborators. The situation has changed," Lisa responded. "The Vex are everyone's adversary." "Nothing changes," Torres retorted. "These are still monsters. They slaughtered my entire squad on Centauri Prime, tore them apart with their claws whilst they screamed." Jake recognized the raw pain in Torres's eyes. Both factions had suffered profound losses, fostering resentment. Yet hate wouldn't triumph over their shared plight. Thex approached Torres gently, showing no aggression, hoping to diffuse tensions. Krulon warriors lost nest brothers to human fire weaponry. "Torres, I feel your pain, understand your anger. This war has killed all. For both sides, loss and grief are equal, and both have a right to pain." Torres remained unmoved, but some of the other Marines expressed curiosity about the Krulon, asking questions about their world and culture. Keith, the young Krulon scout, was eager to share stories of his people's past, painting a picture of vast cities and intricate crystal gardens. Krulon builders erected sky-touching towers filled with light pools and song chambers, Cathro shared. But metal demons consumed it all, leaving only ash and broken crystal. The human soldiers were now viewing the Krulon through a new lens. These weren't mindless monsters. They were displaced beings, refugees like themselves, also victims of loss and displacement. Tonight, they arrived at the cave entrance, concealed behind a waterfall cascading from towering cliffs. The deep cave mouth led them through the watery curtain into a massive underground chamber. Jake had never witnessed such a scene. The walls were adorned with elaborate carvings, glowing with an internal light. Intricate symbols and images recounted the Krulon's history, extending back countless years. Frozen starlight crystal formations dangled from the ceiling. "This is where the Krulons learned to think, speak, and dream," Zixna explained of the sacred place of the first nest builders. Intriguingly, further examination of the cave art revealed disturbing details. Some newer carvings depicted human assaults on peaceful Krulon settlements. Human ships rained destruction upon Krulon cities from orbit, as terrified families fled. Images of human soldiers killing Krulon children and obliterating their crystal gardens flashed across screens. "This can't be right," Jake protested, pointing to the disturbing paintings. "Humans don't attack civilians." The Krulon, he argued, had initiated the conflict by invading human colonies. Thexa sighed sadly. Jake Hume, like the Krulank people, had been deceived by their leaders. Both sides had employed false narratives to fuel the flames of hatred and war. Lisa observed the grim paintings, her horror growing. "My God, if this is true, then we've been fighting for the wrong reasons." "Not entirely false," Zixna countered. "Some humans, some Krulon, committed terrible acts. War corrupts even the best, but not everyone becomes a monster." Over the ensuing days, Jake unearthed the true history of the human Krulon conflict. It had begun when a human governor, Pete Collins, coveted Krulon mining worlds. Claiming Krulon aggression as a pretext, he initiated the attacks. The Krulon, defending their homes, retaliated. The war escalated, fueled by brutal battles and relentless propaganda on both sides. Soldiers like Jake were convinced they were protecting human civilization. Krulon warriors believed they were defending their species from extinction. The truth, however, was far more complex. Good humans existed alongside evil ones, and many were simply following orders. The same held true for the Krulon. The real monsters were the hatred and fear that drove different peoples to war instead of cooperation. Sergeant Torres, however, refused to accept this nuanced reality. His anger and bitterness grew with each passing day. He refused to work with the Krulon, trying to incite fellow Marines against them. "They're lying to us," he declared during a heated argument, "using alien mind tricks to manipulate us. These creatures are born killers. They'll turn on us as soon as they get the chance." "You're mistaken," Jake countered. "I've fought alongside them. They've saved my life many times." "Then you're a traitor," Torres retorted harshly. "A disgrace to the uniform." The situation deteriorated further when Vex forces located their hiding place. Enemy troops, inching closer with each passing day, began to explore the outer caves. Humanity and the Krulon were trapped deep underground, with dwindling food and water. Jake noticed Torres spending increasing time alone, conversing intensely with his personal communicator. When questioned, Torres claimed to be trying to contact human forces for rescue, but Jake grew suspicious of his increasingly erratic behavior. One night, Jake trailed Torres to a remote section of the cave system. Horror seized him as he witnessed the sergeant making contact with Vex forces on the surface. Torres was relaying detailed information about the cave layout and the location of the survivors. "Yes, I can lead you right to them," Torres whispered into his communicator. "But I want guarantees. Safe passage off this rock for me and any human who wishes to come." The Vex voice, cold and mechanical, responded, "Your species will be given the opportunity to serve. Those who cooperate will be preserved. Those who resist will be terminated." "What about the Krulon?" Torres inquired. "All Krulon will be eliminated. They serve no useful purpose." Jake was sickened. Torres was willing to sacrifice the Krulon warriors who had aided them, betray those who had fought and bled alongside them. Before Jake could intervene, Torres spotted him. His weapon was drawn. "Well, well," Torres sneered. "The alien sympathizer wants to play spy." "Sorry, Jake. I can't let you ruin this." Torres raised his rifle, but Jake was faster. Dodging the energy bolt, he charged at the sergeant, the blast echoing through the caves, summoning both humans and Krulon to the fray. A fierce hand-to-hand conflict ensued in the narrow tunnel. Despite Torres's strength, Jake's desperation prevailed. He wrestled the communicator from the sergeant's grasp before being knocked against the cave wall. "He's working with the Vex," Jake shouted. "He's been giving them our location." Lisa picked up the fallen device. The Vex voice continued to provide coordinates for the impending attack. Lisa's face blanched in realization. "You bastard," she hissed at Torres. "You sold us out." Torres scoffed. "I sold out the Krulon. There's a difference. Humans can still survive this if we're smart." "The Krulon are our allies," Lisa asserted firmly. "They're monsters," Torres spat, "and anyone who sides with monsters is a monster too." Before anyone could stop him, Torres activated a hidden signal device. Blazing flares erupted from the cave entrance, marking their location for the Vex forces. The betrayal was complete. The Vex attack followed within hours, their heavy footsteps echoing throughout the outer caves as they advanced into the sacred Krulon sanctuary. "How many?" Lisa whispered, checking her weaponry. "At least 30, Jake responded. "Maybe more. They're spreading out, covering all the tunnels." The Krulon, gathered in a corner, conferred in rapid clicks, formulating a defense strategy. The sadness in their glowing red eyes was palpable. Their ancestral home was about to become a battlefield. "We could surrender," Private Andy Bell proposed. "Maybe negotiate a deal." "No deals with the Vex," asserted Zixner firmly. "Metal demons only understand death." Torres, bound and isolated, showed no remorse. "You're all dead anyway," he declared. "At least I tried to save some human lives by sacrificing others." "Saving lives isn't about choosing who dies," Jake retorted. The first Vex soldiers entered the chamber, tall, slender figures shrouded in black armor, their faces masked by glowing red visors. Each carried an energy rifle capable of blasting through solid rock. "Organic life forms detected," announced the Vex leader, his voice mechanical. "Prepare for termination." The battle commenced immediately. Human Marines and Krulon warriors engaged the enemy, the cave resonating with the clash of energy weapons and the shattering of stone. Cathro, a young Krulon scout, fell. Zixner's anguish was evident as she battled against overwhelming odds. Jake watched his Krulon allies fall, fueled by a burning rage. These were not monsters, but brave people. More Vex soldiers poured in. Forced to retreat, Jake and the survivors realized a terrifying truth. The Vex weren't rushing to kill. They were systematically driving the survivors towards a trap. "Vex have plan," Vexor murmured. "Block all exits. Make killing box for final battle." Trapped at a dead end, only 7 survivors remained. Jake, Lisa, and 3 other Marines, along with Thexker and Zixner. "At least 60 Vex at the exit," Lisa grimly stated. "We've got maybe 20 shots left." The Vex, however, delayed their attack. General Vorak of the Vex Empire, larger and more heavily augmented than the other soldiers, appeared. Half his face was metal. "The Krulon will be exterminated," he declared. This, he stated, was non-negotiable. Their species, deemed too violent for the Empire, presented a different story. "Humans, you can reason and adapt," the general declared, "and prove useful." Jake's stomach churned. The general offered to spare the humans if they abandoned their brutal allies. "Those who surrender will be taken to processing centers," Vorthak continued. "You will be modified to serve our empire. The modification would preserve your minds, ensuring a specific form of existence." "What about those who do not surrender?" Lisa inquired. "They will be terminated, along with the alien animals," the general responded. Torres spoke immediately. "I surrender. I led your forces to these people, and I deserve to live." Vorak's mechanical eye centered on the sergeant. "Your cooperation will be rewarded." Jake looked at his companions. The prospect of survival, after weeks of conflict, was enticing. Even as slaves of the Vex Empire, they would still live. But Jake's gaze fell upon Thexker and Zixner. The 2 Krulon warriors were prepared to fight to the death. They had lost their world, their people, their friend Keith. Their only possessions were honor and loyalty to the Allies. "We could take the deal," suggested Corporal Dan Price. "Live to fight another day with cybernetic implants controlling our minds." "That's not living, that's existing," Jake countered. "Better than dying," Price argued. Jake remembered the cave paintings, chronicling their people's past errors. Their war with the Krulon had begun through greed and prejudice, fueled by the hatred that held both species captive instead of fostering cooperation. Now, they had the chance to do better, showing humanity beyond its darkest impulses and that loyalty and brotherhood outweighed survival at all costs. "Thexker," Jake addressed the Krulon leader. "If our positions were reversed, would your people abandon us to save themselves?" The alien warriors regarded Jake intently. "Some would," he admitted. "Fear makes cowards of all peoples. But honor compels us to fight for our kin, even unto death." "Then that is our answer," Jake proclaimed. He faced General Vorak. "We will not surrender. We will not abandon our friends. If you wish to kill them, You will have to kill us too. Lisa nodded in agreement. We stand together. The remaining Marines wavered, but remained steadfast. Loyalty triumphed over fear. Vorak's mechanical voice held a hint of surprise. Fascinating. Your species continues to display irrational behavior. You choose death over survival. We choose to remain human, Jake replied. Very well, the general stated. You will all be terminated. But first you will witness the slow demise of your alien friends. Perhaps this will clarify the cost of defiance. Vex soldiers raised their weapons. Jake gripped his rifle, preparing for the final battle. Beside him, Theexa and Zixna exchanged words in their native tongue. Jake understood. It was a farewell. Yet, as the first shots fired, a truth emerged from Torres's betrayal. Some humans chose selfishness over honor. Others, like Lisa and the steadfast Marines, chose loyalty over survival. The same applied to the Krulon. The true monsters were the fear and hatred that drove people to do terrible things. The only way to defeat them was to choose hope over fear, loyalty over survival, and love over hate. Even within the ancient cave, far from home, this choice was worth fighting and dying for. A blinding display of deadly lightning lit the chamber, as energy bolts from the Vex weapons ignited the ancient cave. Jake ducked behind a crystal formation, as the very stone beneath him shattered. Theexa returned fire, his massive weapon unleashing emerald bolts that disintegrated Vex armor. Yet they couldn't prevail with weaponry alone. The Vex outnumbered them and held superior firepower. The defenders faced imminent annihilation. A solution presented itself. The crystal formations weren't decorations, but part of the cave's support system. If enough were damaged, the chamber itself would collapse. This would claim both friend and foe, unless there was a way to manage the collapse. Jake studied the ancient Krulon writings. The visuals detailed a system of tunnels and chambers designed for emergencies. Secret passages led to other sections of the cave system. The old tunnel behind the altar, Theexa exclaimed. Does it still function? Yes, confirmed the Krulon leader. A hidden escape route to surface caves, but the mechanism is ancient and unreliable. It's our only chance, Jake replied. Can you get everyone to the tunnel? And what about you? Lisa asked, firing at an advancing Vex soldier. Jake's voice was firm. Someone must stay and trigger the collapse, giving you time to escape. Not alone, Zixna declared. The Krulon warrior, though injured, stood ready to protect the tunnel entrance. General Vorak's voice echoed through the chamber. Enough! All units, advance and terminate the organics. No more delays. The Vex soldiers in perfect formation moved forward. Jake knew they only had 30 seconds. Go, he instructed. Reach the tunnel. Lisa hesitated, then nodded. She led the Marines to the hidden passage as Theexa provided covering fire. Jake Human has been a worthy ally, Theexa said. The Krulon will remember. Remember us both? Jake asked, glancing at Zixna, who had positioned herself to guard the tunnel entrance. As Jake prepared to activate the collapse mechanism, he conceived a plan. A message to potentially alter the outcome. He activated an emergency communicator and transmitted a message across all frequencies. This is Lieutenant Jake Morris. During the broadcast, Vex soldiers relentlessly advanced, and energy bolts whizzed past Jake's head. For 3 years, humans and Krulon have been fighting, he declared. We thought each other were monsters, but we were wrong. The real monsters are those who exploit our differences. Zixna roared a battle cry, charging into the enemy ranks. Her claws tore through armor, but more enemy soldiers followed. Jake continued. Kethro, a young Krulon, died protecting human soldiers. Zixna, a brave Krulon, is dying. The Vex want to destroy both species. The only way to disarm them is to work together. General Vorak reached the front lines, his weapon aimed directly at Jake. Your words are meaningless. Your species will serve or die. No, Jake said. We will choose to be better. General Vorak fired, but before the energy bolt could reach Jake, Zixna threw herself in front of him. The blast engulfed her, and she collapsed. With her last breath, Zixna uttered a Krulon prayer. Jake, filled with rage and grief, activated the collapse mechanism, heading for the hidden tunnel. The chamber exploded in a torrent of rock and crystal, crushing the Vex soldiers. General Vorak's final cry was silenced by the collapsing ceiling. Jake reached the tunnel, just as it sealed shut. He crawled through the narrow passage, followed by his companions. Outside, a hidden cave opening revealed itself on the mountain's far side. As the sun dipped below the crimson horizon, painting the jagged landscape in fiery hues, Jake surveyed the survivors. Lisa and 2 Marines stood, whole. Thex, though wounded, was mobile. That was all that remained of their contingent. "Did anyone hear the broadcast?" Jake queried. "I don't know," Lisa responded. The Vex likely had jammed most communication, but perhaps some signal had broken through. The next day, ships materialized in orbit above Zerion 7. These weren't Vex vessels. The human and Krulon fleets, both having received Jake's transmission, had been unexpectedly galvanized. Captain Amy Foster, commander of the human battleship Liberty, was set to engage the Krulon fleet. Instead, she initiated communications with the arriving alien ships. "This is Captain Foster of the Terran Defense Force," she transmitted. "We've learned of the events on the surface. Humans and Krulon fighting side by side against the Vex. Perhaps a similar approach here is warranted." Krulon War Chief Nexor responded swiftly. Krulon warriors perceive truth in human words. Metal demons are enemies to all life. The Krulon fleet joins the human fleet for a great battle. The ensuing conflict marked the first joint human-Krulon military operation. Combined, their forces attacked the Vex invasion force with devastating effectiveness. The enemy ships, designed to counter individual species, were no match for the coordinated human technology and Krulon tactics. From the surface, Jake watched as explosions erupted across the sky, consuming Vex vessels one by one. The once invincible invasion force was crumbling under the combined strength of erstwhile adversaries. The victory, however, transcended the battlefield. Across both human and Krulon worlds, citizens demanded an end to the futile war. They mourned the fallen, soldiers of both species who had died protecting one another. They craved the cooperation vividly displayed in the face of the shared enemy. Torres, discovered alive in a collapsed cave, was apprehended by arriving human forces. At trial, he remained unrepentant. "You are all fools," he declared. "Cooperating with aliens. It's unnatural. It defies all that is human." "No," Jake countered from the witness stand. "What is unnatural is choosing hatred over hope. What defies human nature is rejecting the good in others." Torres was convicted of treason and sentenced to life imprisonment. Yet, Jake found no satisfaction in the punishment. Torres, a victim of fear and war-fueled hatred, was himself a casualty of the conflict. His true punishment was witnessing the transformation of the world. Human and Krulon engineers united to rebuild war-ravaged worlds. Medical teams shared knowledge, healing wounded soldiers of both species. Children, raised in hatred of alien monsters, played with young Krulon in integrated schools. Promoted to Major, Jake was appointed the first human ambassador to the Krulon Confederacy, working alongside a Krulon counterpart. Together, they established the first joint human-Krulon colony on Zerion 7, built amidst the ruins of the ancient cave system. The colony became a symbol of the unity they had achieved. The combined creativity and strength produced technologies and art forms neither species could have created independently. Crystal gardens blossomed around the settlement, more beautiful than anything either culture had wrought alone. Years later, as an old man, Jake would often sit in those gardens, remembering the friends he had lost. Cathro, the young scout, Zixner, the courageous warrior, Private Bell. They had fallen victims to fear and hatred, but their deaths were not in vain.